everybody. Welcome back to Daily Dirty Podcast. I'm your host, John Croft. Hope everybody is doing good today. Wanted to talk about a little bit more mental health, which is the direction I'm trying to get my podcast going. And I wanted to talk about taking testosterone and ADHD. Well, having ADHD while taking testosterone. I see a lot of people on TikTok, which that's going to be another podcast I'm going to kick in. I think I'm done with TikTok for a hot minute. Just too much negativity in there. Way too much. So I started TRT is basically what they call it, for low testosterone back in 2018. Found out that I had really low testosterone, which causes a ton of issue. Mainly mental focus, being physically tired. There's just a lot of things within your sexuality. There's just so many things that are involved with that. And you take that with ADHD. Everybody's ADHD is a little bit different. You have some common factors within ADHD. And this is just basically my experience that I've had with the two. First and foremost, when I first started taking testosterone shots, it was a roller coaster ride. It was, the doctor that was there, actually they're not called doctors. They're registered nurses is what they call themselves. Liability, I'm guessing, I don't know. So there's this guy at this TRT place in Rockwall I was going to, and Tisha and I, my wife, we lived in Mesquite at the time. And she did a lot of research because there was just a lot of issues I was having in it. And I'm used to it, but it started getting to where things got worse. Like there was no energy. Like I'd wake up in the morning. This basically seems like the signs of depression. When you have low testosterone, it's hard to get up out of the bed in the morning. You got to force yourself to do things. You got to, your thinking pattern already for ADHD is just all over the place. And she did some research and was like, hey, you ought to check and see if your testosterone levels are where they need to be at, because they just falling in the same lines of how I was feeling and my reaction to a lot of things. Now, before getting deep into that, let's talk a little bit about ADHD. ADHD, like I said, is different for everybody. This is just what I went through, or what I'm still going through with my ADHD. And I probably had ADD when I was a kid, or some form of that. Growing up, I don't know, it's changed throughout the years, but my family, they couldn't afford any kind of Ritalin or anything like that. They just don't pay for it at the doctors. We had no health insurance. So growing up with ADHD was a totally different thing. You can't figure out why your mind can't really focus on one thing. And a lot of it also is the fact that you can't concentrate on a lot of things because there's just so much that's going on in your mind. ADHD is like your mind's going a million and nothing like all the time. It's like, why I talk so much is because there's so many things going on a million times. Why, I wasn't a big gamer because my thumbs, couldn't keep up with my mind. It just doesn't work like that. So ADHD has its own challenges within trying to keep focus. And the way I explained it to my wife is it's like I have this Rolodex that's rolling around in my mind. And it's just like you try to grasp a file to hold on to that within that Rolodex of files that are running around. You grab it and you can hang on to it for a brief second. Then it's just like it melts or disappears in your hand. Basically, it's the easiest way to describe it, because you can't just keep focused on one thing because your mind is just squirrel moments all over the place. And there's people way worse than I am. So before my wife and I had met, I did try taking something, Adderall for ADHD. And it was a very low dose. I was just comatose all the time. Like literally, I was just slobbering on myself, just sitting here, just like, and it slowed everything too far down to where I didn't have the energy or the thoughts to even process anything. So that's kind of ADHD for me, or growing up with ADHD. There are some benefits of ADHD is like the job that I have. I'm able to work multiple tickets at once. I mean, of course, I can't, talk to two customers at the same time, but being able to be on Zooms and work with a customer, and any slight chance I get, I could be on another ticket working. My mind can go back and forth. Time management is great if you know how to use your ADHD to help you with time management. It just helps out a lot. Now, there's a caveat to that, is learning how to switch that off. So having routine with ADHD is kind of key, and it kind of helps keep that focus to where you're able to do your job. The problem with that is when you get off work, and my wife isn't a routine person. She just does what she does like a normal person, and it's hard to shut that routine off of your mind when you're not using it. So trying to pay attention to this or trying to pay attention to that, it takes a lot of mental focus. Okay, I just want to kind of give just a little touch on ADHD for me. So, and also, working on cars back in the day, always having a couple of jobs, always keeping my mind steady and occupied to where I don't have to focus too hard on one specific thing. And I can, the problem is that sometimes I have so many projects I'm never able to finish all of them. My mind just goes to something else. So that's just kind of a little bit of touch on my condition for ADHD. If you want to call it a condition, some people call it a condition or curse, or it's good, it's bad, but everything has good and bad, right? So let's enter in the low testosterone. So low testosterone, and it's different in everybody. I see a lot of people, and again, this TikTok thing is killing me, but I see a lot of people talk on TikTok, and they've only been on it for like 2 years. And these are people without ADHD, and they're just like, oh, this is the amazing things that it does for you. Look how cut I am. Look at all this. And these guys are like in their 20s. And it's just like, well, yeah, you're in your 20s. Your testosterone is probably not too terribly low. But yeah. So you look at that, and it's just like, I try to explain to people, don't just say it does just this. Provide the facts of what it does for you, and let someone be their own judge of what it does for them, or at least give them kind of an insight of different varieties of what it does. So for me, it was hard to focus. So think of already hard to focus with ADHD, and then your low testosterone, mentally it's fog. And that's what they call it. It's like you're in a mental fog. It's like walking in the fog trying to find something, and you're all over the place. So I went to this doctor, and they do all these tests and shit like that, and they're like, they ask you questions. You're just like, do you have, brain fog? Do you have, hardly any energy? How's your intimacy with your specific other or yourself in some people's cases, right? And they ask you, a couple of questions before they do blood tests. And the one key thing that they tell you, they're just like, well, we need to let you know if you're taking this synthetic testosterone, you're not going to be able to have any kids. I couldn't have any kids anyway, so I was all right with that. My wife, she couldn't have any kids. She didn't want any kids. So that's just another thing that you want to look into. If you plan on having kids and things like that, you might want to take a different route or ask more questions about that. I don't really know because, we don't have any kids. There's some squirrels. There's squirrels running in the back behind here in the window. It's freaking crazy. I guess they're trying to get their nuts for the winter. Nuts for the winter. But anyway, see, ADHD, a literal squirrel moment. But you fill out all this stuff, and then they draw some blood from you, and your first visit is just basically kind of seeing where you're sitting at, and, within the questions. And then a couple of days later, you get your blood drawn, and you go into your next visit, which is usually like a week later. And you go in there, and I think my testosterone was like a 167, 163, something like that. I'd have to look that up. I think I got the record somewhere. And at that time, I was 43. I'm about to turn 44. And the gentleman was like the nurse practitioner, was like, yeah, you definitely need to be on testosterone. So there's that, again, that squirrel moment in your mind thinking, it's like, okay, is this a scam? Is this really true? But they show you all the blood and everything like that. And it's like, okay, after a while, you're like, okay, well, let me try it and see what it does. So there's different forms of testosterone. Like you can go to your regular, family physician and have them do these tests as well. But the thing is they can only get you up to 500. And a lot of times it's through creams, which creams don't work for everybody. And you got to be very, very careful with the creams. I did it. I mean, you can put it on the outside of your arms and stuff like that, but you got to let it dry. And, you can't have nobody touch you, especially a woman, because now the testosterone is introduced in them. They're going to start growing mustaches and shit, a better beard than I got. There's just a million things that could go wrong there. So at first I didn't try that. And then there's like a pellet form where they insert this pellet into your bottom. And it just dissolves. It's time. It dissolves over time and gives you a specific amount. And I'm just like, I'm not doing that right because I like something foreign in my body like that, which, I mean, I'm injecting foreign shit, but that's just, no, there's so many things that go wrong with that. So I'll opt to do the shots. So they start you off kind of low just to kind of see where your base is and how much you're going. And here's the thing with that, and depend on the person. Me, I don't really take a lot of meds because they don't work on me. My body just, I don't know if it absorbs it differently or what the case is. Like, I mean, if I have a slamming headache and I take aspirin, it's just not going to do nothing for me. It's just like throwing a Tic Tac in a whale's mouth. You're just not going to get that freshness, right? But you don't really get, my body doesn't really get that effect. On top of that, having a high pain tolerance, people are like, oh man, that must be cool. No, it's not. It isn't really that great because that's your body telling you, from what I understand, or for me, that's my body telling me that something's wrong and you need to get this figured out. If you don't know that pain threshold, it could be a point to where it's too late. So it's got its good things and its bad things. More bad things in my mind because I'd rather feel some pain that way. I mean, it's not like I do feel pain, but it's just not as intense as people that don't have, a high pain tolerance. So keep all this thing in mind. And at the time, my ADHD was kind of in check because of my job. So there goes that squirrel again. It is just on it. So I get on this testosterone. You go in every week and you gotta, you go in, they check you and they ask, oh, how's your mood? How you feeling? How's this? And it's just this long thing that you got on an iPad talking about, how's your morning wood? How's your sensitivity? How's this? So asking those questions, there's another thing that they look at, which is your estrogen. And yes, guys do have estrogen. So if your estrogen gets too high, a couple of things wrong with that. One is it's going to rob your testosterone. So the higher your estrogen, the lower your testosterone, your free test, all that stuff, it's going to affect it. On top of that, it's going to affect your blood pressure. On top of that, it's going to affect your emotions. When I mean emotions, like any emotion, anger, sadness, happiness, you're just all over the place. The best way I can think of is how would I say that? Hormonal balances in a woman during her menstrual cycle, or pregnancy. Your hormones are just all over the place. And it does kind of the same thing for men. I still don't believe men can get pregnant, but that's just my personal opinion. If you do, hey, happy for you, Mr. Guinness World Book of Record having ass. So you have to watch those levels. In the first couple of weeks, you don't really feel a change at first. They're giving you very low dosages because they're seeing how your body's going to react. Now, when I said that my body reacts differently to medication, it does the same thing. So I was going in there, and let's just say I'm like a month and a half in, and I'm not really feeling any different. So the doctor's like, okay, well, let's try this. So they bumped me up. And now I'm starting to kind of feel some things. At first, you like it. Or me personally. I started having energy. My sex drive kind of went up a little bit. And things of that nature. But my ADHD was also affected. So my ADHD, you have to relearn how to balance out that ADHD and find a way to make it work for you. So let's just kind of move forward because nothing really crazy yet. So let's move forward about 4 months. 4 months is in, and I'm telling the doctor, I'm like, look, you're filling out this thing. How are you feeling? How's this? How's that? I'm just right there. And I just tell him, I was like, I kind of felt great, but I felt like I'm plateaued. He goes, oh, you don't plateau. It just keeps going up. And when I say a roller coaster, it's like when you take testosterone, and it really depends on your body, how much you take, the type that you take, and things like that. It's a roller coaster. So when you get up, you want to get at that peak. At that peak is where you got your energy, where everything is great and everything like that. And you want to hold that peak as much as possible because then you're going to have a crash. The crash is when it's bad because then you're just like worse off than you were before is how I felt. So I just went in there and I was just telling them, I was like, man, something's not right. Something's wrong. And then they're just like, well, let's put you on some DIM blockers because I didn't personally, but there's some men that claim that their nipples got all sensitive. I didn't get all that shit. What I got was, I was angry as fuck. When I mean angry, it was like, I started a conversation with myself and got mad at myself. My wife just sit there and watched the whole thing go down. That's how bad it was getting. And explaining it with having ADHD on top of that is, it's like I'm sitting right here, okay? And I'm inside my brain. And someone else is controlling my body. And there's nothing I can do. The controls are stuck. There's nothing I can do. I'm out of control. All I can do is just watch. And that anger was just intense anger, and that's where your estrogen comes in. Okay. A lot of misconceptions of people, for me personally, it was my estrogen just kept getting higher and higher, and it just made me more emotional. And not having that, on top of not having testosterone, growing up with that, you go through some shit. Like, I felt that I was getting all the negatives because there are negative effects, the side effects of it, which is, anger issues, random hair. Like I was that person. I never was that hairy of a person. Thank God I got Indian or Hawaiian or some other kind of shit mixed in with me. And I just don't, I have no hair on my legs. I've been like that my whole life, right? You can see my arms. You don't see hardly any hair. No hair on the top of the head. I don't think that's part of it, but just wanted to throw that in there. So, and you get, bumps, like a bunch of bumps. Like if you see this on my arm, this is from testosterone. It's not that I'm shooting up, and I don't give myself shots in my arms. You get this, it's like your pores get clogged, or your hair follicles get clogged or something, and it just causes these little seeds that you have to get out. And it will still be like this until you get that seed out, and it's painful. And you're like digging in your arm to pull something out. So you get a lot of these bad side effects. But I no longer had energy. I didn't see, and also it's supposed to help with weight loss as well. So I wasn't getting any of that stuff. Energy was gone. My focus was all over the place. I was angry, and I was getting hair in weird places. I get pissed off about that. Like every small thing pissed me off. I woke up pissed off. Just my start of the day I was just pissed. And it's hard to just change that. So when people are like, oh man, but I bet you're gaining muscles. I'm not a gym rat. I go to the gym now for health reasons, but I'm not in there trying to be a bodybuilder. I didn't get that benefit either. It's like, man, I'm too tired to even go to the gym. Or you got to get your aggression out. So we started going to the gym, and it didn't change anything. So I went to the nurse practitioner. I'm like, dude, look, man, I think this just isn't right for me because it's not working. He was like, let me do your blood work and let's talk about it. I'm like, all right. And I still got another shot. That's just the best practice because it's like, you can't just get off of testosterone. And I'll tell you about that in a bit. So go in, they do my blood, and my estrogen is like, it's like up here. And it's like basically my testosterone starting to sink because my estrogen is robbing that, and I started gaining weight, around the midsection. Of course, when you get older, you start getting, men, they carry the weight in their belly, right? And it's like, I don't drink beer. I do love eating, but that's just a lot of food to get that. Because, I think at the time, I weighed like 219, 220. And of course, a couple of months, I was up to 240. It wasn't muscle. So they're like, okay, we're going to put you on some DIM blockers. And I tried just the over-the-counter DIM blockers, and those weren't working. So then they subscribed this medication. It's actually for women that have breast cancer. It's supposed to kind of help out with that, you know, keep the estrogen levels down and things like that. It's an estrogen blocker. Um, and it's called, I never can't think, it starts with an A, estradiol or something like that. So I just took one this morning, matter of fact. So I don't remember. So we went that route. Once I got on that, the thing is these are some little pills, and they're just like, you just need to take a sliver of this pill and see where it's at. So I took like a sliver, and shit just stopped working. Like, it will knock your dick in the dirt, literally. Like, you're supposed to, men supposed to wake up with that morning happiness, man. Your buddy down there wakes up before you do, like, man, it's time to get up. We got to go use the restroom and start our day. Now, it was just not even working. No matter what I did, it just wasn't working. So I go to the doctor, and I'm just like, man. And I'm that kind of person. It's just like, I get tired of shit real easy. It's just like, man, either you got the answers or you don't. So that was the attitude I brought in. And they're used to people going in. Now, the little nurses in there that help you and give you the shots, they were always really cool with me. And, I was always a gentleman towards them. So, and you're sitting in there and you see these people, and these people were just stacked. These guys up here, they're just stacked meatheads and shit like that. I'm not sitting there thinking, I'm like, how long you been on testosterone? I mean, I've been on it for like a year. I'm like thinking, okay. I was like, so you started going to the gym? They're like, no, it just did this to me. They're full of shit. Maybe they're not. It didn't do like that for me. So finally, it just got to where I was just so all over the place. And I went to the doctor. I'm like, look, man, check it out. Or the nurse practitioner, sorry. Look, dude, I'm all over the place. I was like, I got ADHD. I don't know if that has anything to do with this, but I just can't get right, man. I was like, I don't want to take something where I'm pissed all the time. And I was just an asshole. I mean, I'm already an asshole, but I was an extreme asshole. Like, everything pissed me off. And I put my wife through some bullshit, That squirrel, man, he is on it. But, so finally, it got to a point. There was one night, and my wife and I got into it, and it was me that caused it because I was just pissed all the time, and I felt so bad. And it was a regret of mine. Again, I never laid a hand on my wife. I just would never do that. I just, you just don't do that. And I took my ring off and I set it on the counter. I was like, I'm done. It's not that I'm done with her. I was done. I didn't want to put her through that, and I didn't know how to fix it. And you just feel like you're not getting any help from anybody. They're making money off of you, and they're just like, well, good luck, buddy. So walked down the dirt road a piece, sat there, and I literally cried. I was just like in tears. I was just like, I don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. My wife was crying. She was angry at me, and I understand why. And I walked back in the house, and I told her I was sorry, and I was just like, I'm done with this testosterone. And she was like, well, they said you got to kind of wean yourself off. I'm like, fuck that. I really have no energy and try to find a way naturally to boost my testosterone, to get me back intimate and all this other kind of shit, my mood better, my foggy mind. I really find a different way. I can't do this no more. I don't want to be this person because I'm not this person. So those people that say you can't quit cold turkey, yeah, the fuck you can, because that's what I did. I stopped going back, and I couldn't do it. Get about a year into it, and work was just getting really hard, and it's just, we started going to the gym without me being on testosterone, and things are great. I love going to the gym with my wife. My wife is freaking awesome. She's a good accountability partner. It gave me a little bit, but I just wasn't there. So I went to my doctor, and this doctor that they sent me over to, this Zimbabwe dude, was just, couldn't understand half the shit he said, and he just had an attitude. And normally I'm okay with that, because I'm just like, all right, he's a dick, but, apparently he might know something I don't know. He's a doctor. He went to school for some shit. And he was like, look, your testosterone level, and it was way lower. So that's the thing that they talk about where you can't just cut off because your testosterone is just going to be almost non-existent. And I think I was like a 123. He was like, yeah, I can get you up to 500. Let's go ahead and try this cream. So it's like hair gel is what it seems like to me. It's just kind of weird. It's actually kind of like those hand sanitizers that you put on, but you take a shower and you do it in the morning and you put it on here and right here, and it's a pump system, so it's 2 squirts per arm is what it's got to be at. And this shit, one, it's a pain in the ass because I can't have any physical contact with my wife for some amount of time, and my wife and I are very physical even throughout the day. We're always holding each other's hand, we always giving hugs and stuff like that. That's just how we are. And so it's taken that aspect out of it, and it wasn't really doing anything. I felt like I was going backwards. It was worse. I did that for a good 4 or 5 months, and it just wasn't doing anything. And then I was talking to my wife, and she's noticing everything. It's just like I was just tired. Like I didn't feel like getting out of bed. And people was like, "Oh, it's because you were depressed." Motherfucker, I wasn't depressed. It was my testosterone. So she was like, "Well, let's try a different doctor. There's one over in Tyler. Let's go check that out." And I'm like, all right, let's go check that out. Let's go see what they got going on over there. So, and this TRT, they're the same corporation. So everything that was there transfers over there. They can see everything on the iPad it was in the past. And I went in there and this doctor he was just straight up cool. He was cool people, man. I walked in there, dude had some tats and his ears were gauged and shit like that. And he was just, I can't remember his name to save my life, but he was like, let me check and see what you did in the past. And he was just like, oh man. He goes, yeah, this ain't right. And I'm like, right? I was like, I thought it was just me. He was just asking me kind of a little bit of my journey. And I was just like, I'm pissed off, or I was pissed off like all the time. Like I got an argument with myself, man. I mean, everything pissed me off. Everything set me off. And the jealousy, like I've never been jealous in my entire life. My jealousy, let me tell you about that in ADHD with jealousy on testosterone real quick. Your mind makes up shit. And then you rabbit hole to that shit. And it gets intense. Like the smallest thing that my wife did differently outside of routine, I questioned it. It was bad. So your mind just takes you to a totally different level of jealousy. Not only that, I never grew up with jealousy. I never grew up with these things. It's like going through puberty. I didn't go through puberty as a kid. I didn't get all those zits and all that crazy stuff like that. My testosterone wasn't very high, so I just didn't have that. I didn't have that drive to chase women. I didn't have a mean streak in my butt. Well, I did have a mean streak when someone pissed me off and they hit me, but I think that's just everybody. But other than that, I was just an easygoing guy. So this doctor, he's looking at my shit and he's just like, dude, he goes, this is just totally wrong. No. And I told him, I was like, every now and again, I just didn't get that bump of energy. My wife knew. And I knew that in my mind, I thought the reason why the testosterone was working because I'd get done with my shot and on our way, because it was about 30, 45 minutes to home. And, where we went to the store or something like that. And I was just like, blah, 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 blah. And my wife just kind of smiled. She goes, I see the testosterone was working. And that's what I thought it was, but it was a lie. This doctor said this, I guess he's not. He's a nurse practitioner too. He's like, that guy must have been giving you a B12 shot. He goes, was you taking B12 shots? I was like, I don't remember taking any B12 shots. He goes, that's what B12 does to you. He gives you that instant boost of energy, which puts my ADHD in overdrive. And I'm yapping like a son of a bitch, man. Like I'm all over the place. Like it's like speed talking. And he was like, yeah, he goes, that just kind of doesn't seem right. He goes, you should have been just on testosterone. Now, I don't know the effects because I never kind of got deep into that of what B12 on top of testosterone on top of ADHD is. All I can tell you is how it made me feel. It was just like mood swings were like, man, it was bad. It was really bad. And this nurse practitioner, doctor nurse practitioner, he was like, yeah, he had been giving me B12 shots. He goes, so we'll live that. And I told him, I was like, well, I felt like I was on a roller coaster, man. And I was like, one day I felt great. The next day I just felt like I was going to beat everybody up, or I was pissed off about something. I was jealous about something, or, and there's days where I just feel like, man, I'm depressed. I can't think. And all through all this thing, I was like, I got all the side effects and I didn't get any of the good stuff. Like my junk wasn't working. I didn't have any energy. When I got up in the morning, it was just like I had to drag my ass, and I was a morning person. Like I had to drag my ass out of bed. I was like, and I told him that's why I stopped. I was like, because before I didn't have a problem dragging my ass out of bed. I was a morning person. I didn't have a whole lot of energy, but I guess I was just used to it. So he was like, all right, this is where we're going to start you off at. And at this time, we came in the next time and he goes, we kind of rehashed from the week before. And this is kind of how they did it. Because, you have to get the blood levels and stuff like that. My testosterone was like way down here. My estrogen was like way up here. And he was like, this is what we're going to do. Normally they start you off really low, like say like a 40 is what they call it. And I guess that's just like 40 millimeters or 4 mil, not 40 mils, but I think it's like a 4 millimeter, right, on a syringe. He's like, we're going to start you off at 100. We're going to get your stuff kicked in. And that's what he calls it. Like, we need to kick your testosterone in with this stuff and kind of get you going. So I was like, shoot, okay, let's try it again. And he was like, those pills, he goes, I want you to take half of one. Every time you come in and take a shot, I want you to take half one of those estrogen pills, the estradiol or whatever it's called. I was like, okay, cool. So things are going great. I went through, I think, four times. And it just wasn't happening for me. It just was, I couldn't do it anymore. One is, it cost a lot of money. I ended up having, because I smoked, I had to go get my blood dumped every month. And it was just like I hate giving blood at certain instances because my body started reacting to it. My body was starting to think, oh, giving up blood, and it just, and my wife can tell when I needed to get blood because I was just so tired. I go and I get blood, and then for like, for that month, I was like, I felt great. So that was another thing that we discovered with that is your hemoglobin of where that's sitting at. Now smoking, it's going to be up there pretty high because it's just, you're robbing yourself of oxygen, you're putting carbon out. I'm not going to go into the details and shit, right? There's just too long of bullshit. But doing that, it got to where I became anemic because I went to my regular doctor because we were doing our yearly physical, and the doctor's like, man, it's like your iron is way low. They're like, do you eat meat? And I'm like, yeah, I eat some meat, man. I'm a meat eater. Shoot, I was a grilling bastard. Let me tell you what, I was grilling everything. I'm gonna grill that damn squirrel that keeps running across. No, I'm just joking. And so they're like, I told them kind of what my situation was about me taking testosterone and me having to give them my blood and all this other kind of stuff. And I smoke and all this other kind of shit. And they're just like, yeah, your body ain't gonna be able to handle that. You need to do it every 2 months. Here's the thing with that. If you go to like Carter Blood Care, and if your hemoglobin is too high, they won't draw your blood. You'd have to get your blood dumped. Now, coincidentally enough, this TRT place, they offered that service for a low price of $50. $50 to dump my blood because it's not good for anybody else. It's like, damn, man, I paid $39 a month for these people to come dump my trash. Shit, $50, a one-time thing. How many times do I got to get this done? So I did that a couple times, and things kind of seemed to iron themselves out a little bit. And it just started getting right back it was before. And I asked this doctor, I was like, the one that I went to in Tyler, I was like, let me ask you a question. Can I plateau on this? And he was like, yeah. He goes, that's why we kind of raise you up. He goes, once you get to a certain point, and the thing is that I want some of y'all to understand is everybody's kind of different. As far as your TRT doctors and what works for one person, one works for the other. So these TikTokers are saying, this is what you do. Look, motherfucker, that might work for you. How you should have said that. This is what I do. Figure out what works best for you. That's how that shit went down. And that's how I'm saying it. You got to work what's best for you because everybody's different. Some people are looking for that number. I was looking for how it made me feel. And a lot of places, they want you to hit this number. Well, once you hit this number, you should be good. That doesn't work for everybody. especially having ADHD. So the cool thing about this doctor was the fact he was like, I don't want you to concentrate on this number. Let me worry about the number. I want you to worry about how you feel. So I'm like, all right, cool, man. He got me up to, I think it was a little over 700, and I felt great. I was more positive. Because having low T also drives you to some depression, signs. I was able to get my ADHD under control. I was able to focus a little bit better than I was off of it, with my ADHD, my improvements at job, things of that nature. You know, everything downstairs was working really good. And, all that was just starting to go good. And then I just kept plateauing. So there's a thing that's out there which I've kind of done and kind of switched to. It's microdosing. So we talk about a peak in the roller coaster. So what you want to do is you want to get to where that peak is, and it's okay to dip a little bit, but you want that next shot to kind of kick into where you're just doing just a little bit of a wave. You're never going to get it straight. Some people might be able to get it straight. It just, if you're fine tuning with other, prescriptions or something else that's going to help you keep that level there. Mine's the gym, or walking around a lot or doing something. It gets me to where that little wave is still there, but I'm able to keep it at a good steady pace. So I was doing it every 4 days, and that seemed to work out. But I ended up stopped going to the other guy. It was wasting gas. It was going out there, and then it's just the problem with these TRT places is the turnover rate is just so all over the place. And it's not that I'm against a woman with testosterone, because there are women that you do have a slight testosterone. So it's kind of opposite. So men, we have a little bit of estrogen and a lot of testosterone normally, and women have a lot of estrogen and a little bit of testosterone. Like, like PCOS. My wife has PCOS. There's people that's got PCOS, and basically what it is your testosterone is just kicking in high gear. And it shouldn't be. And it's been able to get those levels down, which that was something that I kind of see it sort of like the testosterone. It's new. It's a new, I wouldn't say illness, but a new situation that just came about of putting a name on it and kind of find a way that can work that out to get you back to normal levels and whatnot with your hormones. So getting into that, you go and try to figure out how to get that balance. The thing is, going back to this place, is it was a different person. And I was just like, where's this guy? And they're like, oh, well, he's at this other location, and it's like too far for me to drive. Living out in the country, it's a long drive to fucking everything. I'm like, okay. So I dealt with that lady for a while, and she just, nothing against her personally. She was cool people. I loved talking to her, and I felt comfortable around her. It's just she couldn't quite grip. So I went back to this railroad of bullshit. I mean, this roller coaster of bullshit. And I was just like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, your levels are too high. And I think that time I was like a 750 something. And I was like, no, but I feel great. Well, no, you should be down at 500 for your age. And I'm like, but when I was down there, I didn't feel great. Well, we need to worry about the numbers. So you're like all over the place. That's not, like I tell you, the thing about TikTok is those guys come out and it's like, oh, this is what you need to do. Well, that works for you, dude, but it doesn't work for everybody. So it wasn't working for me. I was like, I got tired of it again. And I just told my wife, I was like, I can't do this. I can't go back. I can't go back to how it was. And it's scary. That's always going to be in my mind of how I treated my wife. I was just an asshole. Like, I'm just not that way. I love my wife more than anything. I was like, I can't get this jealousy thing back. I can't get all this crap back. I'd rather just not take it, and we'll just have to figure something out. So I stopped going. I stopped doing the shots again. And I just stopped going to give him blood, because I was just like, I'm tired of getting poked. I'm getting, poked every week, and then every month I'm getting blood drawn. I was like, I just can't do it. And I wasn't giving myself shots. They were injecting these big old shots in my ass, right? And I remember my wife seeing it one time, and she just saw how big the shot was. It's like an 18 gauge needle. Is like that freaking long. It's probably not that long, but it was a big fucking needle, because you got to push this thick shit in you, because it's all based off of oil, right? And so I was just like, man, screw this. I can't do it anymore. I just end up getting all over the place. It this time it didn't hit me as hard. I like gradually kind of went down to where it's hard to explain. You just feel like that your energy is just slowly being sapped out of you. You know, like somebody's behind you. Just I need a little bit of your energy today to make my energy better. You know, imaginary thing, and it just got way worse than it was before. So when they tell you that you can't just get off of testosterone, when you take testosterone, you're basically supposed to take it for the rest of your life. You know, my thing is I'm not taking it for the rest of my life. I'm gonna get to a point where I'm gonna be an old guy. I'm just like, look, you know, we'll have to figure something else out in the sex department because I'm not going to put a kickstand on this motherfucker to get it going, right? It's like this dude has done did his duty. We are good. Let's just lay it to rest. But, so I dealt with that for a while and I ended up going back to the original places. I found out that guy was no longer there at the place over in Rockwall. And it went good for a minute. It went good for a minute until it came to a point where I was being denied the shot. The lady's like, no, you got to get blood work done first. And before, they'd see my blood and they'd be like, okay, we're going to go ahead and give you the shot, but you got to go give blood. And it was lower than it was this time. Before my hemoglobin was like way the hell up. The previous nurse practitioner, him and I kind of got into it because he said I had some kind of blood disease or some shit. And I'm just like, okay, excuse me. So, can I get one more? Give me one more. 2 is all I'm getting today. So, I forgot to mention, I had went to all these heart doctors and all these, you know, doctors and paying this money to see if I had some kind of blood disorder. You know, they're just like, your liver levels are like this. You must be drinking. Motherfucker, I don't drink. You know, I don't eat a lot of cholesterol. I don't do bacon. I don't do all that crazy shit. And the doctor, 2 doctors, matter of fact, said there is nothing wrong with you. You have a fatty liver. That's just what it is. It doesn't mean just because you're drinking. That's just how you naturally are made. So I'm like, okay. So I went back and I gave this proof to that doctor back then. He just kind of was like, because he knows it all. He knows more than everybody. Apparently something went down. I don't know the full story. Nobody told me. I don't really give a shit. He's no longer there. So I get there and there's this little lady and I'm just like, and my wife's just like, you know what? Just kind of go with it. And I'm like, all right. It's like my wife, she don't feel comfortable with a male gynecologist. I wouldn't let my wife feel comfortable with a male gynecologist. It's like, dude, what made you wake up in the morning and think, man, I just want to get down there and just be all kinds of cooch, man. I am going to be the cooch doctor. Man, you might see some good stuff, but you're probably going to see some really bad stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know how that, same thing with proctologists. Like, man, I want to stick fingers in assholes. Anyway, I don't want to get on that subject. But, listen to her and everything like that, and things started getting back kind of a normal, decent pace until the time I went in and she was like, and I was giving blood and I was feeling good. She's like, oh, we can't give you the shot till you give this blood. Or you pay us $50 on top of what you're paying. This comes at a time where you do your labs and it's more expensive because I was paying $20 a visit. Then it was like 100 and something. And then on top of 100 and something, and then $20 for the shot, and then $50 to get my blood done. And I was like, I explained to her before, and I was like, you can look at my history here. My blood was way higher, and I still got that shot. I have to have that shot because if I'm off, it's going to roller coaster me again. No. This is how we do it. This is how we've always done it. And I looked there, and I was just tired. I was like, no, this isn't how you always do it. I was like, you know, I have it on my app, and I can show you everything within this. And when I still got the shot, no. I was like, so did the policy change? No, it's always been like this. No. So her and I kind of got into it, and then I just told her, I was like, you know what? I'm not paying you shit. I'm done. You know, I walk out and I drove back. You know, you got to think it's a 2-hour drive one way to Rockwall because where we live at. You know, and I called my wife on the way home. I was like, I can't deal with this bitch, man. I can't do it anymore. We're not spending all this money just so they can make a profit. And that's basically what they were doing. So, the testosterone journey is just been rough. So, I have a doctor that I work with. It's a Texas Men's Health or some shit like that. I can go through uh, my doctor here locally and get my blood checked twice a year. As long as there's nothing fishy, I pay my doctor, my testosterone doctor. He sends me what I need, and I take my own shots. Right? So with that, this doctor basically said, he goes, you have to kind of see where your levels are at and see what makes you feel the way that you need to feel and how you need to give your doses. Right? So I do the outer thigh. It's like I do I think it's a 23 gauge. It might be 25 now. You have an 18 gauge that draws out your testosterone, right? And then you take that tip off and you put your 23 or 25 gauge that's a half-inch needle. And I do it on my outer thigh in the muscle. And now I swap thighs. As a matter of fact, I got to take a shot today, but you swap on each side. And I first started off doing it every 5 days because that's what I was used to, going through the TRT place and everything like that. And I wasn't taking any of the DIMs because I want to kind of test and see the difference. And again, there's different types of testosterone, right? You got 250, 200, and site or some bush like that. I'm not going to go into all that crap, right? And it worked okay. Then my wife and I started going to the gym. We started getting a little bit more active around the house and things like that. And it was a little bit better. Okay. I don't know if it was stress or anything like that, or maybe it's because I'm doing it myself. I check my blood pressure every time and I write it down on this notepad. Like I got this notepad that's got every time I put it in. So having ADHD is trying to remember to take a shot, right? So at first I set my phone to it and that didn't work very long because I can't really get into that routine on my phone because I hate being on my phone. But anyway, long story short on that fact, I got to where I was taking it every 4 days and I lowered the dosage, right? I was doing like 6 millimeter or whatever mm stands for on the syringe. So it's basically half this, a little bit less than half the syringe, or actually a little bit more than half because it's 1 mil syringe. So I was doing a little bit more than half 4 days a week. And that was working pretty good for a while until I started going to the gym. And going to the gym, I started getting a little bit more acne and stuff like that. I was like, okay, so the gym kind of helps you kick in some of what little bit of natural testosterone you have is what I'm guessing. Even though they say when you take this, that your testicles just stop, producing testosterone. I'm like, oh, it's already there. Our job is done. We don't have to do shit. We're just going to sit back and watch, right? So doing that, we went through and got to answer my wife here. That's where I kind of been at right now is I switch back to 5 days and go back to 4 days. And there's different ways to do it. Now you got to think I'm only doing testosterone and creatine for working out. And that's it. So this is kind of what I went through in that aspect. So if there's anybody that's out there that's planning on taking testosterone, is it good? Yeah, it can be, but do your research. Don't listen to these TikTokers. Some of them have good valid points for them, and I have nothing against them in that aspect. But don't listen to everybody. Listen to what your body is telling you. Listen to what your mind says. So if you have your ADHD, you're gonna be in for a ride. It's gonna take a minute to figure it out. Like I've been on it for 5 years, almost 6 years, right? And I'm just now over the past year was able to kind of get to where it's good. It ain't exactly where it needs to be at, but it's 10 times better than it was before. I still get ticked off sometimes, and I go and I take me a DIM blocker, and I'm good. But do your research. Kind of look into it. If you're good, some people are good at just getting at 500. Look at your delivery system. Would you have a pellet? Some people's done that. Or can you take your own shots? Do you have somebody that can give you the shot? Or do you want to go to a location where they give you the shot? Look into those things. Look at your blood very closely. Look at your hematocrit, your hemoglobin and all that stuff. Look where your level's at. And above anything is that estrogen. Keep an eye on that estrogen. Some doctors are like, oh, don't worry about that. Yes, do worry about that, because that's robbing your testosterone. That estrogen doesn't know if it's synthetic or real testosterone. So it's going to try it. To me, it seems like it tries to go out there and knocks that and robs your testosterone. So you're injecting more to get a better result. And then your estrogen is like, oh, you're going to give more? I'm going to take more. So that's when you need to get your DIMs in order. Get you it's called DIMs. They block, your estrogen. Now, it doesn't completely block it. It just knocks it off its horse for a little bit, to where it's like, when it starts getting there, because you'll wake up and you'll start feeling that. Every little thing will start pissing you off. It's like, it's time to take my pill. Because if you do it I do it every other shot. If it starts getting intense, then I do it every shot. So just want to kind of give my experience with testosterone and having ADHD. Do your research, people. Do your research. Find you a good doctor. Don't just, go to that doctor and be like, okay, cool deal. And it might cost you a little bit of money, but it's going to save you in the long run. TRT places, I haven't seen a whole lot of success stories out of them, and I'm not knocking them. They got their own thing going. But talk to your primary first and kind of let them know what you're doing. There's some that can give you the shots too, right? You got to draw it yourself, and they mail it to you or they give it to you there. And if you got somebody to shoot you, with the needle, or you can do it yourself, I don't know. I got over it. I hate needles, but I got over it. So do your research. When you do, ask those questions. Well, what are you going to do if my estrogen is too high? Ask those questions. Ask about your blood. Ask about the effects. If you have ADHD, let them know that you have ADHD. And if they look at you like you're dumb, then that's the time you need to go to somebody else, because they don't understand that. Because they're going to say, well, I'm not a psychologist. Well, you got to know what this is going to affect my body. So just look into that. And anybody that has any questions of anything I've gone through, there's something I probably forget, but any questions that any men out there have, or even women for your husbands or whatever, reach out to me. I can tell you the processes I went through, some things that worked for me, things that didn't work for me. It might not be the same, but it kind of at least can point you and give you some kind of guidance to kind of see what you're working with. But just want to throw that out there. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Again, this is Daily Dirty. Y'all have a great day.